Again, the directions are very tricky on the test. It says choose two of the structures that match the assessment aim and one that does not. Assessment aim, remember we talked about assessments. What do we want students to know, do, and understand? Assessment is the evaluation. So on 35, it says to assess learners' interactive speaking skills. Okay. So discuss the advantage and disadvantage with your partner. Remember, interactive speaking skills is when you're talking to someone, right? So discuss the advantage and disadvantage with your partner. That would be a way to assess learners' interactive speaking skills. Use prompt cards to guide your role play. That is also practicing speaking skills because you don't have a script, you have a pictures. So based on your pictures, that will promote use to use language. So you're still creating your own language. And remember, a chant is a song. So when you repeat a chant with your classmates, you're not practicing your interactive speaking skills because you're just memorizing and repeating words over and over and over again. Match the dictionary entry with the type of dictionary listed. Now, I have found that people have difficulty with this section because most of the things are online now. I think about 20 years ago, people wouldn't be having trouble with dictionaries because that's what we had to use as a reference material. So when you're looking at the three different types of dictionaries, remember idioms are sayings in the States or in England that are not literally translated, but they have a meaning. Dictionary of Language and Culture talks about how words have a meaning inside a cultural context. And dictionary of verbal phrases are, remember, we already studied that today. It talks about two words that go together and they're verbs, okay? So in 42, it says, shoot the breeze. Well, can we literally translate that? No. So that means it's an idiom. So that's the reason why it's an A. In race relation act, just the fact that the word act there means that it's a law passed. So you know that it's not a verbal phrasal verb. So you know that's language and culture. Petroleum dollar also talks about a specific type of dollar based on the sale of oil, which would also be considered a dictionary of language or culture. It's not an idiom because we actually can translate it, and it's not a phrasal verb. Family tree are two nouns, so you know that's not a phrasal verb, and you know it's not an idiom because we can translate it. So it's a dictionary of language and culture. Reference sources are nonfiction. It is the information where we can find facts, not opinion, but facts, okay? So these are some of the questions that you had some difficulty with. So the main purpose of using a language awareness book for teachers is for teachers to, well, just the key of books for teachers means that the teacher is seeking knowledge for themselves. So that's the reason the letter A is the correct answer, improve their knowledge of the language. Okay. Check common collocations of words. Well, you're not going to find that in an awareness book. You're going to find that in a dictionary. And find materials for students. Well, you're not going to find exercises for them in there. So A is the correct answer. The main purpose of using a book about L1 interference. L1, remember, it is your native language. All right? So why would a teacher want to use a L1 interference? So if you had Spanish speakers, you would want to find out what are the most common errors the Spanish speakers make, so you can help them out. If you're teaching French or Japanese, you want to find out what their most common errors are in speaking English. So one of the reasons why the teacher is looking at it is to anticipate learners' likely errors. It's not to find supplementary teaching materials because you're not going to be using that. You're not going to be teaching them the interference. You want to be able to identify them. And you're not going to be checking learners' understanding, because when we're talking about interference, we want them to use the language correctly and not incorrectly. So the answer is A. Now, the main purpose of using a L2 monologue dictionary is to, now monolingual means that there's only one language. Even though L2 means it's the language that you're teaching, monolingual means that that dictionary is only of the language that you're teaching. So you can't look up two definitions in language. And in the monolingual dictionary register, you're not going to be able to look at register either, because register talks about language, how language is used, if it's used politely or casually. And you're not going to find that in a dictionary. But what you are going to find in a dictionary is examples of meaning in context. And finally, the main purpose of using a grammar reference book when planning a lesson is to help identify the use of target language. The reason why you're doing that is you want to know what the rules are and you want to know what the patterns are. In a grammar reference book, you're not going to find practice exercises for learners. And keep up to date with new words and expressions. Well, that's not the type of grammar reference book you need for that. You would have to look at an Indian book in order for you to have that type of information. So the answer is C, to identify the use of target language. And you can also learn how to use the rules and the patterns that go with that grammar element that you're teaching. Here we're looking at language functions, and that's something that you read about today. So it says, match the teacher's comments about course books with their use. Contextualizing means to give students the content of what they're going to be studying, or to give them the insight of what they're about to be learning. So it says, my learners love the cartoons it uses to set the scene in each unit. The cartoons give the students information of what they're going to be studying, which is the reason why it's contextualizing. I like the way it uses situations that are related to teenage lives and interests. Again, they're using prior knowledge of the students. The students are going to be activate their prior information, and they're contextualizing the teaching, the learning. And in 66, the simple language is used makes all the new ideas and concepts clear for my students. Well, the simple language used is explaining, because it makes all the new ideas and concepts clear. So that means that the students can understand what's going on, and that's the reason the answer is explaining. Again, this is one of the tricky explanations or instructions that the tests have. They're asking you to complete the supplementary materials and choose one that is not correct. That means that two of them are correct. Now remember, a graded reader is to be able to teach reading at different levels. So people are reading different books. So you can't have the whole class read the same book together. So the answer is C. A range of graded readers allow the whole class to read the same book together? No, because graded readers are different books for people to read inside a classroom based on their reading level. A pronunciation practice book. Now, a pronunciation practice book enables learners to work on individual sounds. This is for the visual person, and it also teaches them how to stress the intonation. But the thing about the pronunciation is that it does not help interactive skills. Remember, interactive skills is when people are talking to each other. And when you're using a book, you're not talking to each other. 70, a board game. Now, a board game can be designed in order to focus on a particular area of language. Let's say if you want to work on verbs, you can create a board game that the students have to practice past tense verbs, irregular and regular. It's also a motivating way to give learners language practice. Whenever you create something as a game or a board game, students are more inclined to be excited about it and use their language to use it. Now, a board game can help learners to analyze how language is used. No, we're not. The key word here is analyze. We're not breaking down a sentence and they have to tell me which is the verb, which is the noun, and which is the adjective. Um, you don't do those in a board game. That is when you're breaking the sentence apart and trying to figure out how to put it together and how to use it correctly. All right, 71. A DVD film with subtitles. It enables learners to read and listen to the same time, which is really good for visual and learners. And it helps learners to compare sounds and spelling. It does not make listening comprehension more challenging because, like I said in the previous one, it enables learners to read and listen at the same time so they're able to comprehend. So C is not the correct answer. And finally, exam practice books. They help students familiarize with the stereotypes like what you did just now so you can see the style of the test. And it also includes answer sheets so you can actually look and correct your own answers like you guys did also. Exam practice books is not motivating at all. So that's the reason why the answer is A. Now we're matching the teaching aids with the teaching functions. A phonemic chart. Remember, a phonemic chart is a piece of paper that has all the visual symbols of how to pronounce words. So a phonemic chart is to help visual learners correct their punctuation. To tell you the truth, I don't find it useful, but Cambridge says it's useful, so that's why you have to learn it. Language laboratory. Language laboratory is a place or a moment in time where teachers can monitor and give feedback on students learning spoken language. They usually have tapes and they say the words out loud while the teacher walks around and listens to their pronunciation and able to give them feedback of their language. A flip chart is a big poster board, and so to review no vocabulary and use for poster board. These are the things that teachers usually have in the classroom to write things on so everybody can see. And the reason why they use a flip chart is so they can actually keep it and hang it around the room instead of putting it on the board where they erase and never see it again. So a flip chart is able to keep knowledge that was constructed with your students. Well, this is a brief overview of the questions that you had some difficulties. I hope that this gives you a clearer idea, and if not, please contact me.